Hello. Welcome, beautiful souls. My name is Sadhana, and welcome to Thursday Night Tarot Chat. I'm so happy to be here as always. This is one of my favorite get-togethers during the week. And one of the things that has arisen over the past few months, I've been putting out a lot of content for people that are already reading tarot, people that are comfortable reading tarot. And so I've had quite a few requests from beginners for beginner courses, more beginner content. And I'd like to start putting some of that out there. And I know there is a lot. So for example, if you search in the YouTube search bar, my beginner top 10 beginner decks. I'm not sure what I put in the description box below. Beginner tarot decks. There's a lot of videos that come up, and some of them are newer, some of them are older. And I believe each tarot reader brings something different to the table. And so I'm going to offer you my take on this. I've never done a beginner deck video to my knowledge. And we're going to have a little bit of camera facing down as well today too. And I would really welcome your input into the chat and let me know where you started, what your first deck was, what decks that you recommend to beginners if you work with other tarot readers as well too. So hello to My Voice Tarot, and hi there, Jen. That was a lovely interview. I watched part of it with you and Tracy. That was just beautiful. I'm looking forward to hearing more of her. So Jen just got off a live and she was doing an interview with Tracy from Two Rocks Tarot. So it's really amazing how this community connects and reaches out and supports each other. I really enjoy that aspect of it. So we're going to look at 9 beginner tarot decks tonight, and I'm going to share with you why I feel they work well with beginners. And interestingly, I started when I was planning this yesterday. I had 18 decks on the table, and I started to go through them. And I just began very slowly to cut back on the list because I felt there were certain cards, certain artistic takes on traditional cards that made it more challenging to read as a beginner. And I want to offer that up and just look at lots of cards tonight. So let me know what you think and how anything I say, works for you, either as a beginner or as a more experienced reader. Welcome, and hi, thanks for being here. So let us kind of get to the cards, and I'm going to do my best to flip the camera, switch the camera up and down. And I'm not doing these in any particular order. And some of them you may have seen featured on my channel more than others. And I hope the lighting continues to be to support this as well tonight too. Okay. So what we have here, and the lighting is a little low, so we're going to get a little bit of funkiness going on here. Wonder if that will help. This is The Spirit Within Tarot by Stephen Bright. And this is a deck that I really enjoy working with beginner tarot students. And the reason for that is that everything is in silhouette. And so not only are we not dealing with particular races of people or particular, different things going on in facial expressions, it's just very easy to connect with. It has a modern slant to it. It has a lot of energy and a lot of emotion. And I love this Hierophant card. It's contemporary. We see what looks a bit like perhaps a church in the background. It could be, in a schoolyard. We have 2 students on the ground. The teacher is standing. I love that the energy, the light is radiating in the background. It kind of shows, you get a feeling from the cards. And I think that's something that is important. When you have a beginner's deck, there needs to be an energy that is easy to connect to. And a lot of decks are really complicated. And this one has a, I don't like to call decks simple because they're not. And I think Stephen just put a lot of thought and work into this deck. And it's very easy, I believe, to interpret the pictures of what is going on. And depending on your experience, your background, you will be able to bring in associations, from your culture, from your community. It's a very simple color palette. There's not a lot of different colors. It's easy to recognize the suits because the suits are associated with a certain color or a certain array of colors. And I think that's another thing that's really important in a tarot deck, because we need to quickly recognize the minor suits. And so you can see the wands are kind of an orangey color. So yeah, it feels good. It feels good. And I feel really comfortable teaching with this one. This, hi, Jonathan. This is Stephen Bright's deck. So this is, I will show you the box. I put most of the boxes close to me. It's called The Spirit Within Tarot by Stephen Bright. It is by Schiffer. It comes in a, sorry, I'm quite close for the cards. I'm not going to mess around with the camera. There's a picture of Stephen. He has a channel. He doesn't post too often, but when he does post, his content is amazing. Yeah, so this is The Spirit Within. And I think there's something about energy. And that's why a lot of the decks I've chosen tonight, they have that energy. You also have the contemporary aspect to this deck, but it's not so contemporary that it distracts from more of a traditional deck. When I began, and I edited just now, I put a link to my first tarot deck video in the description box below. The deck that I started with was this one. This is the Robin Wood Tarot. And a lot of people, if you search this particular topic on YouTube, everybody starts with the RWS. And I did have a copy of the RWS when I was starting. And I really didn't connect with the imagery. I found it very difficult to work with. I didn't relate to the background scenery. And I was looking for a deck that followed the system, yet brought in other colors, and there was a little more something to it. And then I found Robin Wood's extra book, and I fell in love all over again with the extra book. Her background story, she worked for Llewellyn, and just the story of how the deck came together, how many iterations of the deck it took to put together. She goes into so much detail about her choice for colors and all of the little details in the garments. And so with this deck, you do get a lot of information in the extra book. And if you're interested in that and you like to work with the abundant amount of information from the author, then it's there for you. So I really, connected deeply with this deck. And I loved the questions that she poses in the extra guidebook. Some of the cards, it's a little too much information, but other cards, it was really, really helpful. And you can see, for those of you that follow Rider-Waite, it is very close to that system. There's very few deviations from that. And there's, of course, an abundance of decks that are similar in that way, right? You could choose the Morgan Greer. It's a little bit close up for some people. There's so many different variations of, and I love this Six of Swords. I love that we see the kind of ghostly figure here driving the boat. It's just really, it's really well done. And I almost brought out for you the, if I do this, if it's good help. So I'm sorry for the low light. I was going to bring in another light and I didn't. Um, one of the groovy ones. So the groovy ones or the trippin' ones, but I just found the change, it was too much. And there was too much emotion in the court cards for the cups and so forth. So I really think this one sticks really nicely to fairly close to the RWS system. And it has just that nice little touch of pagan energy. The pentacles are really, really beautiful, as are the swords. Oh, you what, 97? You had this deck, hey, Jonathan? Yeah, I can't remember when I first got it. It would have been a little bit after that, I think. So one thing, if you are not familiar with this deck, I just want to show you how beautiful. I'll see if I can find it. I love, oh, there's the Three of Cups. And I'm going to talk about this Nine of Cups in a second. How beautiful the clothing is on some of the costumes. I'm going to talk about this Nine of Cups because I think that's a card that is worthy of discussion. So this is the Queen of Swords. And in the Queen of Swords, I'm really sorry about the focus, guys. We have butterflies on all of the robes. There you go, if I hold it up. And the flowiness of the costumes and the air, it's just really beautiful. So I love these ones. My second deck that I used a lot was the Osho Zen Tarot. And the Osho Zen, which I'm not showing you tonight, is one of those decks that really got me thinking about alternate meanings in various cards and what the Nine of Cups means. And I know a lot of people associate it with the wish card, the fulfillment card, and so forth. But when a decorator draws it in this way, we are reminded of, again, we're getting close to the saturation of the suit and perhaps excess as well, too, even in the Suit of Cups. And I don't know if you know the Osho Zen Nine of Cups. I believe it's called laziness. And anyway, I kind of get a sense of that with this deck as well, too. So it's a little better if I hold the cards up. I'll try to do that for you. Hello, West Star Tarot. The chat has been really weird tonight. I was on another, I was on Jen's channel earlier, and it's been really, really odd. So this deck does come in a little box. I don't know if it's packaged like this anymore, but this is the box that I got it in. And you have to buy the extra book separately. So the first two decks I've shown you are mass market decks. And most of the decks I'm going to show you tonight are mass market. But I thought I would throw in a couple of indie decks as well, too. And I think this is one that really is a great choice for beginners. There's a lot of concern. There's a lot of awareness is a better word, of diversity in the tarot. This deck is called This Might Hurt. It is an indie deck. It's this is the box. And it is available, I believe, in a couple of different forms. And if any of the decks I show tonight are out of print, I do apologize. To my knowledge, they are all in print. This is a beautiful tarot deck. It has a holographic sides. And it's just absolutely beautiful to shuffle if you love to shuffle. The cardstock is amazing. I love working with this deck. And because this deck is not super, it's so close to RWS. And I'm not going to show any more Say or Thoth decks tonight. That's not where I started as a beginner. I think this is a really accessible way into the tarot, unless you have a background in astrology, or you're coming in with the background information, or you just love to study, I think you could come in with the Tarot de Marseille, or you could come in with the Thoth if you're willing to put in the hours. But I think if you're beginning and you want to come in a little more quickly, the RWS is certainly, it's a quicker entry point, I feel. Here's the Six of Swords in this one. And I don't know, I think she did a really good job with this one in staying close to the RWS and not, not getting too contemporary. We see the strength, we see the power in the Chariot here. I really like that she is riding these two bikes and she's not attached to them. One of the things in the Chariot card I love is when there's actually no reins and there's kind of this unspoken power potential. It's a really good Four of Cups. And so because it is contemporary, there's an accessibility here. There is an accessibility. So I don't know, it feels very, very easy to read. And I believe that you could read this straight out of the box, just looking and feeling the energy of the cards. And you know what's going on in this Eight of Wands. You don't need a book, right? You can just really kind of pick up on what's happening here. Yeah, Isabella did a really good job. The court cards have just the right amount of things going on in each page, on each card. The aces in this deck are all offered by a hand, and I love this Nine of Cups. This is a very different take from the last deck that I showed you. And we have a real sense of contentment here in this Nine of Cups. And the trouble is when we're looking at fully illustrated decks, how do we, my question is this, when we're looking at a fully illustrated deck, sometimes it can be really hard to go to the opposite aspect. So if a card is reflecting a light aspect, how do we find the shadow? If it's reflecting a shadow aspect, how do we find the light aspect? And so here the woman in the Six of Pentacles has quite an attitude. And this is one of the first ways that I learned to read the Six of Pentacles, was to really figure out, if the querent was on the receiving side or the giving side, and what the attitude is of the giver, because that can really be built in. And so if you happen to choose this deck, you are going to lean toward the energy of the facial expression of the person in the card. So my question was this, if every tarot card has a shadow side and a light side, a positive side and a negative side, or a whole range of possibilities, I should say, because there's always multiple layers to every single card, and we have a particular artwork. Sometimes it's hard without experience to bring in the other side. So that is one of the drawbacks of starting with the RWS. And one of the advantages of starting with the Tarot de Marseille is because you don't have so much information on the cards. I really like this High Priestess. I would like a chair like that. So that is my number 3 recommendation. So the first one was, and these are not in any particular order, and I will link them all below eventually in the description box below. Spirit Within was first, Robin Wood, and this one is This Might Hurt. I think next I want to go to this deck, because it is also a contemporary deck, but there is a lot more going on. So this is by Poppy Palin, or Poppy Pollen. I'm not sure how she pronounces her name. Everyday Enchantment Tarot. And Everyday Enchantment Tarot. This is, I have trimmed mine. Also is color coded. And I'm going to hold these up for you. I wish one of the kids were here. I could get them to bring another light. Okay. There is a lot going on in these cards. This is the Five of Wands. I had this in the thumbnail. And I wonder if I could get more light by showing you on my other camera. Okay. There's a lot going on in these pictures. The thing that I like about this deck for beginners is you can read this deck as a story. It's very easy to pick up on the story. It's very easy to leave the guidebook alone because you can read it as a story. You can read the cards from left to right, just like you would read a book, or from top to bottom, or however you want to read it. It's not a difficult deck to read. You can feel the facial expressions. You can very easily speak from the voice of the characters that are in the cards. I find it's a really, really good reader. And again, which deck was it? One of the other decks I showed you. Oh, it's the Spirit Within Tarot also is color-coded by suit, which is really helpful. The thing about this deck, though, like any fully illustrated deck, is when you have a particular scene or a particular situation, it does take time and it does take experience to know that that's just an example, and that particular scene or that particular situation is just an example, right? So yeah, and there is great diversity in this deck, not only in races, not only racial diversity, ethnicity, ethnic diversity. It is all different body shapes and sizes, lots of different ages. I think this deck hits every single category. And as far as I know, this is the only tarot deck that has figures with Down syndrome. So here we have somebody who's living on the street. We have professionals. It's really well done. We have a farmer. So we have people in the rural setting, people in an urban setting. So it really does cover a lot of territory. Yeah. Mystical Lady, did you miss the name of this one? This is Everyday Enchantment Tarot by Poppy Palin. Yeah. The other thing about this deck, which is truly magical, is on every single card, it's a bit like Where's Waldo. If you like Where's Waldo, there is a pixie. And if you find the pixie is interacting with the energy of the card. So here on this one, the pixie is right here. And the pixie has an expression. The pixie is doing something. And it's really, really fun to... really fun. Okay. Alrighty. So that is Everyday Enchantment. The next one, which a lot of people have out for this season, is Everyday Witch. This is not a diverse deck. I'm just going to say that right off the cusp. It is not a diverse deck. However, the accompanying Oracle deck certainly is. And it would... if you like this deck and you don't have the Oracle deck, I am going to switch just a second. I'm going to see if I can switch to the other camera and see if we can get any better. No, that's well, that's better, but it's too far away. Okay, just bear with me here. I'm going to try to fix this so you guys aren't looking at that low light. I might just switch and show them to you. That's too bad. I would have put this one on my face. Yeah, that's going to be way better. Okay, so we can look at it this way. So the everyday witch is full of witches, but what I want to say is that the Oracle deck is diverse. The Oracle deck brought in a lot more energy, and so I would really recommend, if you like the energy of everyday witch, is to pick up the Oracle deck. And then you will have diversity in body size, diversity in race, diversity in a lot of different things. Thanks, Jonathan. I like, oh, this is so good. So this is the Two of Swords. And so she's got her atham in her hand, and she's just throwing her athams into the target. The aces and the pages are brilliant in this deck as well, too. It reminds me a little bit of the Anna Kay. And I know a lot of people have recommended the Anna Kay as a beginner deck. I do not. I do not. I don't think it's a great entry deck. It's a beautiful deck. I have the indie version of the Anna Kay. And there's just, I don't know, there's a few cards that take a kind of a different walk, and it might be great as a second deck, but I wouldn't recommend it as a first deck. And I think that a beginner is really going to also enjoy the guidebook that goes with this. So Deborah Blake has written quite a few books, and they're very accessible. So, here is another. This is a Six of Wands, not the Six of Pentacles, but we've got that same kind of issue that I was talking about. This is one of the things I've been really reflecting on lately, is to really go into the card and feel the energy of the person in the card, and to learn to speak from the voice of the person in the card. Yeah. I love this tower card. You know what I see in this tower card? It's like, well, you wouldn't do it, so I blew the tower. I'm just going to do it for you. You wouldn't listen, so the witch just comes along and blasts the tower. Enough is enough. Yeah. So Everyday Witch is a mass market deck. It's very affordable, and I think it's a really easy read. Two other decks that I totally recommend for beginners that are based on RWS and have excellent guidebooks. This is one. So this is the Llewellyn Tarot, and I have two copies of this. One I trimmed, and one I did not. And I repurchased it and decided not to trim it because I want the Welsh names on the majors, because I think it's important, if you are enjoying this deck and you're studying this deck, to begin to know the Welsh names. And if you do trim this deck, you lose the Welsh names. And that is built into the major arcana, which makes this a really beautiful deck. If you love story, and if you're coming to tarot from somebody who loves history and loves story, you have that. And then you can easily recognize RWS in most of the minors. Yeah. So I want to show you a few of the majors in this deck. And there's a real ethereal quality to Like, I love this Queen of Cups. You can see so much in her face. It's really beautiful. And the Death card, I like this Death card a lot too. I feel that this tarot deck is really good for people who love history and they love story. So here we have Gwydion as the magician. And so Anna Maria Ferguson, the creator of this deck, for the major arcana only, you have a beautiful story that is woven in, as well as kind of a simpler meaning based on the RWS. So the major arcana in the guidebook is really great. So it's one of my favorite parts of this deck, and it's just the right amount. So I also have the Arthurian Tarot, also by Anna Maria Ferguson. And the Arthurian Tarot is too much for me because you get a tail in all of the minor arcana as well too. Keeper of the Well. Isn't that stunning? And so what I'm saying here is that if you have 78 tales to learn, 78 legends to learn, it's a lot. But in this deck, you have 22 legends, which is just the perfect amount. And so I feel it's a perfect deck for a beginner who loves that kind of thing and who relates to that. This is the World card. And I love the Moon. The Moon is one of my favorite cards in this deck. There's a few that are just absolutely stunning. And there's parts of me that deeply connect to it. So this is Lou. This is Lou, who the Llewellyn Company is named after. And so Lou is featured on the Sun card. And I really love the stories. It's one of my favorite parts of that deck. And so when you're looking for a tarot deck and you're a beginner, it is really important that you feel the energy of the deck, like you want to feel connected to it. And it's hard because there's not a lot of shops now where you can go in and actually touch the cards and look at them. And it is different. It is different than scanning cards through Google. It's different than watching people on TarotTube show decks. To actually have the deck in your hand and to play with it and to feel it is nothing like having it. What am I going to say? Yeah, to have it in your hand and to feel it and to touch it is nothing like looking at it on the screen. It's a completely different experience. And so sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes we do. And I have done that on more than one occasion, and regrettably so. This is the Druid Craft Tarot, another one that I think works really well with beginners. It's so close to RWS, but it has that Celtic pagan feel to it. I love the details. I like right now how it looks almost three-dimensional on the camera. It's kind of magical. These are large cards, but when they're trimmed, they're completely accessible. And the guidebook. So if you're watching this and you are a beginner, do not cheap out and get the small deck. Make sure you get the one with the large guidebook, because the large guidebook is a wealth of information. You're going to learn so much about the tarot, so much about the Celtic tradition. So Druid refers to the Druid culture. Craft refers to the witchcraft. So it's a combination of practices. And again, a deck with a lot of energy. I come back to this deck again and again. Love the attitude in this Queen of Swords. Look at her. Right? Amazing attitude. So I may shoot this video again in full light, but we can have a little chat about these decks. So here's a really interesting take on the Four of Pentacles. Really interesting. And you know, one of the Four Pentacles that I really enjoy a lot is the Four of Pentacles in the Thelema Tarot. Do you know that one? There's a little girl out in a field and she's far away from the castle and she's got her treasure box with her. Four of Pentacles is a really, really interesting card. West Star Tarot, I love the aces in the Druid craft. Let me get one of them for you. I've got the Strength card right here, and I like the Wheel. Oh, the High Priestess is right here. So here is the High Priestess. And again, for me, it's about the energy. And I think what happened with me, why the RWS doesn't do much for me, is I don't feel anything. And some people love it. Some people swear with it. They work with it all the time. It's the only tarot deck for them. But I don't feel like it has a lot of feeling in it, a lot of emotions. The Magician is also amazing, as is the Five of Swords. I'm looking for an ace. I can't find an ace. I don't think there's a card. Oh, I know there's another reason why I want to recommend this deck. That's so funny. I haven't found an ace yet. The Moon is amazing. The Five of Cups is amazing. Oh, here's your Ace of Swords. Look at this. It's absolutely stunning. And the Ace of Swords in the Everyday Witch is also a great, great card. I should have showed you that one. So this is the Ace of Swords. One of the reasons why I recommend this deck also is because when we are looking at the energy of Cernunnos, we have a much more rounded energy of the devil. And we have, in that guidebook, we go into all kinds of background information, but it gives a bigger picture of the devil and such a thorough discussion of the devil card and the energy of Cernunnos. And for me as a yogi, that really is important because it connects so deeply to the issues around the second chakra and whether we're dealing with addiction or compulsions in any way, or whether, whatever angle we're at, it's all second chakra stuff. And I love the fact with Cernunnos, we're also reminded, thank goodness, to give ourselves permission to feel joyful and to have fun and enjoy pleasure. And if we can be in pleasure with, at just the right amount and not go over the edge every single day, then we can bring that Swadhisthana chakra into balance. And if it weren't for some of the Celtic decks, I wouldn't feel that. I wouldn't get that energy. And so that's another reason for me the Celtic decks are so powerful and so full of teaching and energy. And I really think that is a beautiful offering of those decks. Oh, Jonathan, you haven't modified a deck. Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes once we get through this. Jen likes the Thelema. It reminds, I remember you saying that. It reminds you of your grandma. Yeah. Okay. I have, I think that's 8. And so I said I was going to narrow it down to 9, and then I'm going to kind of switch the conversation a little bit. I'm going to show you another indie deck. And this is fairly new to my collection. It's called the 5 Cent Tarot. This deck is available in a few different colors. I did not edge this. I chose the lavender edges and the lavender back. I have found this deck to be hello, Audrey, a really good reader for career readings and business readings. And I love the keywords on this deck. I think they did a really good job with this one. And yes, it's super busy. There's a lot to look at. But for a beginner, I feel that because the keywords are done so well, it can be really, really helpful. And I've had a lot of fun working with this deck. I wasn't sure about it, but I'm really quite enjoying it. And I did pre-order the accompanying oracle deck. Here we have the Four of Needles, and the keyword is respite. And then we do have reversed meanings too. So if beginners are curious about learning the reversed meanings, you have an opportunity here. So of all the decks I've seen with keywords and so forth on them, this is the one I don't find this one annoying at all. I think it's kind of a funky little deck. And I love looking at all the little bits and pieces. Yeah. So that's the 5-cent tarot. The creator goes under a pseudonym of Madame Clara. And if you go to the website, you can learn about Madame Clara and how that all started. Matches is the suit of fire. Love this keyword on the 7 of matches. It's conviction. So yeah, Jonathan has the first and second editions of this deck, and also you backed the Oracle deck as well too. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So those are, oh, I didn't show you. That's 9. Is that 9? Okay, so we're going to kind of go, I'm going to kind of go next step, because that was one of the things I wanted to share with you. And then I'm also going to kind of go through what happens when I get a new deck into my collection. And especially if the deck has challenging cards or cards that are difficult to interpret. It's more of an intuitive deck. I have, as many of you know, I have a couple of daughters who are really interested in the tarot. They're in their 20s. And when they were looking for tarot decks, they were fortunate. They had a large selection of decks to go through and really had a hard time finding a deck that they connected with. One of them has taken the Green Witch Tarot, which fits perfectly with who she is. And the other one deeply connected with this deck. And so this is her one and only first tarot deck. And the reason this deck worked for her was because of the person that she is. She's deeply connected to the earth. Well, both of them are. And this deck has so much energy. And while this 9 of Wands doesn't look anything like a 9 of Wands in an RWS deck, can't you feel the energy and the connection? And you don't have to read as you would an RWS, right? You read the story and you read the feelings and you read the energy. This is a fairly body beautiful deck. And all of the Fae in this deck have white skin. Stunning Queen of Pentacles. And this is another deck that explores so the Devil card is called Shadow Dance, and it explores really great energy with the Devil card. And the aces are animals, and so that can be problematic for some people, but there's only 4 animals. So that's fairly easy to navigate. And I love that the 7 of Pentacles is a pregnant woman. It just fits really well. And it is so close to the energy of RWS. And if you have that, if you are a beginner and you feel connected to the Fae, you feel connected to nature and to the earth, you will love this deck and you won't have any trouble reading it. I think the thing that people complain about with this deck in reading it is that it's too close up. And so that's also the case with the Morgan Greer, but some people swear by the Morgan Greer. I love this card. And I find this deck has such a good variety of facings that when you lay the cards down, it's so easy to weave a story, right? And with a straight up RWS, you do get a lot of, I've never actually counted, but you get a lot of faces straight on. And there's a few other decks that I know people have recommended, because I watched several of these decks for beginner videos when I was preparing for this. And I'm just kind of like raising my eyebrows. Okay, we all have different tastes. We all have different opinions. And so here I am today sharing you, my thoughts on this. If you're coming into the tarot and you are, you feel connected to spirit and you feel a little bit witchy and you love the magic and so forth, I just want to see if I've missed. What do the backs look like? Mystical Lady, the backs on which deck are you looking for? Just let me know and I'll show you the backs. The other deck that I want to show you, I'm just pausing to read the chat. The last one. So this one, these are the backs. They are not reversible. Yeah. And I have a video on all of my Fae decks. Yeah. I don't know. I think that every single deck that I'm sharing with you tonight has, it emotes energy. You can feel what's going on. Like the artwork is truly stunning. This is strength. And there's such a gentleness. Yeah, this is. And the cards that have a different energy in the guidebook, they're just beautifully described, and it's easy to remember the story because there's not that many cards that stray in a different direction. And so I don't feel that it's too far of a reach for a beginner. Okay. So I was saying, if you feel, you are inclined to to the witchiness and the mystery, you already read the moon cycles, and you're deeply connected with the energy of the earth. This indie deck is also one that's new to my collection. This is the Star Seeker Tarot. It also has lavender edges and shuffles beautifully and is diverse. It's pretty much all body beautiful, but it is diverse. This is the 10 of Pentacles. Look at that. And so I would say this is a next step. Or for somebody who's coming to the tarot, who's already familiar with working with energy, already familiar with moon cycles, who embraces their inner witch already. I love this Page of Wands. Oh my God. I'm really enjoying reading with this deck. It's reading really well, and I seem to know exactly when to pick it up. And I like that she doesn't have a witchy hat on, that really resonates with me. This reminds me a little bit of the Numinous Tarot. You know how in the Numinous we have bells for the suit of air? And here in this Four of Swords, we have a wind chime. Yeah, it's definitely body beautiful. But it is diverse. And here's the Knight of Cups. which is a really interesting take on the Knight of Cups. But then other cards are, very, very RWS. So I wouldn't necessarily, this is the box for this one. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this one to somebody who didn't have any background, but it is the Little White Book. So I want to read to you something from the Little White Book because it is really well done. Actually, I don't need to read to you, but I just want you to know that where the Little White Book is not a rehashing of the RWS. The Little White Book speaks to the intention of this deck. It speaks to the, here's the Moon card. Look at that. And I'm going to show you the wheel because the wheel is my absolute favorite card in this deck. The Little White Book speaks to the intention of the deck, which is, it's called the Star Seeker Tarot. Yeah. So yeah, I would say that, so there's no disabled people in the deck, and it's all body beautiful. Here is the wheel. So in a day and age when when the awareness is there, it's unfortunate, but yeah, I really like its connected vibe. Oh, and here's the Queen of Cups. And again, lots of faces in silhouette, which is really nice. Bye, Cindy. Thanks for dropping by. Yeah. Okay. So how I thought I would kind of wind this up tonight was I wanted to share with you, sometimes we unpack a deck and we start to go through it and it's like, ooh, one card is a little challenging. And then another card is a little challenging because they're not familiar. And so one of the things I do, I have a couple of different approaches. If it's trimmable, this is one of the best ways to connect with a deck. And I know some people find this very, very sacrilegious. I don't. I feel that it is a way to connect with the cards one at a time. So this is the Cheminette Tarot, a highly intuitive tarot. It is, Eden says, I believe in her description, that she doesn't expect you to read it the way she intended it to be read. It's meant to be read intuitively. And in this deck, the suit of swords and one of the other suits follows a story, and it's really easy and beautiful to follow the story. So what I do, and I haven't had this deck out for a while, and I wanted to trim it, but at the same time, I didn't want to trim my only copy, so I bought another copy. And Eden still has decks left. I don't think it's ever going to be reprinted. So what I decided to do was to go back and to go through it card by card. And so what I did was I trimmed off the edges, and I want you to see it without the borders. And I'm going to show you a few cards with the borders on. And for me, going back and just taking out a few cards at a time. So what I've done is so far I've trimmed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 10 or 12 cards. And then I thought, well, these cards are now in my hand. They're in my collection. So I'm going to shuffle those 12 cards, and I'm going to do a 3 card with those 12 cards, just beginning to connect with the energy of the deck. And it was kind of crazy because I didn't have, I kind of picked some random cards, and I knew there were associations between certain minors and certain majors, and I'm trimming them in a completely random order. And it just started to connect with me, and it started to unweave something that I hadn't seen before. Because when I first got this deck, I studied it really, really carefully, but I wanted to kind of go back and take a walk through this tarot deck. And so this is a recommendation of mine, if you have the courage. So here are, let's see if I can do this. So this is what it looks like. Sorry, this is what it, where am I here? Oh my God. I have to do this one at a time. So this is what it looks like. It has a black border and the titles are on the bottom. And then this is what it looks like trimmed. This is the Magician card, by the way. So the tendency for most people is to sit down and trim the whole deck, right? So you sit down and you trim out the whole deck. And if you have a deck that is intuitive and a little more challenging to read, a lot of people, either they put the alchemical symbols or astrological symbols or the numbers or other symbols on the card so they know which card it is. But I don't like to do that. I have beautiful, can I say that? I have nice writing. I have fairly decent writing. But I don't want to write on the cards. Some of the cards that I have written on have smudged and it just doesn't ever, I'm never happy with it. So that's why I'm taking my time and just trimming a few cards and then playing with a few cards. And eventually all 78 cards will be trimmed. And then by that time, I will know exactly who's who and what's what. And it won't be confusing. And yeah, I have studied the deck before and have it in my collection, and I can always go back if I forget. But at the same time, it's like a whole new adventure. And you really get to know the cards, card by card. So here's another one. So, right, this is not Death. This is the Hierophant. And part of the story of this deck, so this is the Hierophant who is blindfolded. And that is the High Priestess sitting down at the foot of the Hierophant. And you don't have to read it that way. You don't have to read it the way that the little white book is really little. It's a little white book, but it's chock full of juicy information. It's right here. This is the little white book. And so that's all you get for every single card. But Eden does a beautiful job of sharing the story of the Sheminat Tarot. So whether I have a deck that's trimmable or not trimmable, my advice for you, if you're struggling with different cards, is to just take out 10 cards and just work with 10 cards. Any random 10. You could shuffle the deck, pick out 10 cards, and just work with those 10 and get to know those 10. You don't have to take scissors to your deck. And in the case of, the can't even talk, the less experience that you have, the more valuable this can be because you're less familiar with the cards. And you will really, really get to know your deck this way. And so if you could take your time in getting to know the deck over a month or a couple of months, it would be so, you'd have such a deeper connection with it. So I really recommend not racing into getting to know your decks. Yes, it is the Sheminat. Sorry, I didn't see her. By Eden Gallanter. I believe her website is Eden Gallanter. Okay, and you're having what kind of action does the Knight of Cups take? So I need to go back, Audrey, and see if you're asking me or you're asking somebody else. So Audrey, are you asking in the Shamanet Tarot? Is this question from that? Hello, Viola. So just let me check in and I'll get the Knight of Cups and the cards you were asking about. So Knight of Cups and Page of Cups. If you're talking about this deck, if you're not talking about it, then we'll. Oh, just in general. Oh, because you thought about the Star Seeker Tarot. Okay. So I can talk to it in general for sure. And your question is Knight of Cups compared to Page of Cups. Okay. So all of the pages have an element of naivety. They all have a connection to the earth. They're all deeply rooted, to mother from the way that I view the pages. And the pages are just beginning to explore the energy of their suit. And so they're quite playful with it. They're quite brave with it. And they're like the unedited version of all of the court cards because they have no experience. And sometimes they make mistakes and they go too far. But they definitely have that, they don't really know what they're doing. When we get to the energy of the knights, they have more experience with their suit. So the Knight of Cups has played with his intuition, her intuition, their intuition. The Knight of Cups has had some more experience with emotion, perhaps been advised about lunar energy. And so there's definitely that element. The knights are connected to the element of air, the way I read them. So there also is this energy of movement with the cups. Sorry, with the knights. So the knights are moving. That's often why people draw them on horses. There's this perception with that. If you associate the knights with fire, that's also an ungrounded element. So whether you associate the knights with air or with fire, they are not grounded. So the pages are very grounded. They're connected to mama. The knights are a little freer, right? Their tendency is to wander off. And so when I'm thinking of a Knight of Cups, I'm thinking of, I don't know, just, it would not be a partner, a boyfriend, a girlfriend who felt connected to the relationship long term, but was more in love with the poetry of the relationship than the relationship itself. It would feel experimental, and I feel with all of the knights, there's that sense of experiment not in the beginner learning kind of way, but in a, I want to do something with this energy and I want to see how far this energy will go. So I feel sometimes like the knights test the limit of the energy. And so sometimes you'll see the Knight of Cups come up with the Devil card because there can be that connection to drugs and alcohol as well too, with the Knight of Cups and the King of Cups. So there's so many layers to it. I hope that answers a little bit of your question. Okay. And you'd like to see that in the Shamanet Tarot. Yes, I pulled that up for you. So we have the Princess of Cups. This is the Prince of Cups. And the Prince, Princess Queen and King of Cups, well, all of the court cards appear throughout the deck. So you will, even if you don't recognize them, you will see their energy throughout the deck. And Eden weaves the story of all of the court cards so for example, I believe this in the Ace of Swords is the Prince of Swords. And if you want to learn the story of the deck through the book, you begin to find the connections with the court cards throughout the minors, throughout the rest of the minors, and also in they do appear in some of the major cards as well too. Yeah, so they are Princess, Prince, Queen, and King. And I don't think they're all that close up. Some of them are close up and others are not. So you're very welcome. Audrey has good keywords: experimentation and experiential. Oh, did I say that? Yeah. Sometimes I don't remember what I say. I really, when I work as a reader, try to feel the cards. I feel the energy of the cards, and the artwork is absolutely crucial to me when I'm working with the deck. The very last deck I want to talk about tonight that I think I would encourage, once you've kind of got your first deck, once you're really comfortable with your first deck, if you're looking for another indie deck to really play with and you like to study, and that's the Slow. I think there's a lot to be learned from this deck. And if you like to work with symbol and color, I love this lacrosse team here on this card. And, you can feel the energy of the fire. It's really quite something. And this Emperor is just, I don't know, like, one of my favorite cards in this deck is the Chariot. It's really, really clever. And so I was saying this in regards to the Llewellyn. So if you like history, then that deck might work really well for you. If you like legend, if you like doing research, this deck might be really good for you. So I'm going to give you an example here, because some people dismiss this as just a strange card. So this is the King of Fire. So as a student of tarot, if you love the study of tarot, so one of the things I did was I Googled, because I'm a tarot nerd. I love to do the research. So I think I Googled mosaic blue mask. I think that's what I Googled. Mosaic blue mask. Because none of this is covered in the little white book. And so then I started to read about the legend, the story of the mosaic blue mask, and try to figure out why the mosaic blue mask was on the King of Wands. And there's a lot that's going on in this deck. Why are these wands blossoming in the Nine of Wands? And I think for a student of tarot, probably not a beginner, but somebody who's really got a couple of decks under their belt and knows what they're doing, this is the kind of deck that's really going to get you thinking about the tarot and the energy of the tarot. This is another amazing Page of Swords. Yeah. So the other thing that's really cool about this deck is you can go to the art gallery website and you can zoom in on these pictures really, 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 really close. And on this particular Ace of Wands, you can look at all the little details super close. And it's really, really, really fun. Really, really fun. Yeah. So, and I think that there is a sense of impatience. So I get questions like, how long is it going to take me to learn these 78 cards? How long, you know, how long? Instead of being focused on the result, enjoy the journey. Please enjoy the journey. It's so much fun, and you are going to learn so much about yourself. And it doesn't matter which deck you choose, as long as you pick it up and when you open and you take out your cards, you smile and you feel like, whoa, there's something magical going on here, right? You need to feel that connection with the cards in your hands. If you don't feel that, if you look at the deck and you go, oh, what's this? You're not going to learn the meaning of the cards. You're not going to understand the cards. You're not going to connect with the cards. So that your relationship with the artwork is important. And even in a Tarot de Marseille, if you really like the cute little pink and green colors in the marshmallow, or if you like the weird faces on the dodal, or another older Marseille, you're intrigued with it. Or maybe you saw Enrique Enriquez's tarology video and you're just like so fascinated with the Tarot de Marseille, and that was your inspiration, then go get a Tarot de Marseille and learn through the Tarot de Marseille and stay with the Tarot de Marseille for years. Stay with it for years. And then you can expand to the RWS. But you need to find your heart in the tarot. And if you find your heart and you find your connection, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong, right? It's never, ever boring. And it never needs to be boring. And eventually, you can try the Thoth. And maybe the Thoth is your way in because you love all the symbols and you have a lot of resources and a lot of backstory and information. Or maybe you have, a family member who was connected through some way with some of the secret societies and you know about that. Then go in through that door. So you need to feel the passion, you need to feel the emotion, and then, it won't be difficult. Okay. So I'm just going to check in with the chat. I saw somebody else, well-tempered Claire. Hello. Padangwangi. Do you have a deck which related with your past life? My past life? I do not. I have shared about, I'm not sure if you're talking about my past life or past lives in general. So you can, if you want to clarify that, I will answer that. I have a stack of decks. So when I'm doing past life readings, there's a stack of tarot decks that I use for past life readings. Do I have a tarot deck that connects to my past lives? I haven't found one yet. So in all of the readings that I have done, whether they are psychic or mediumship or readings that I have received, many of my most recent past lives have been as a dancer or some kind of a high priestess, somebody who is heavily adorned and robed in Asian culture. And that seems to be a theme that arises. India, Japan, sometimes it's hard to tell exactly where the culture is, but I've never found a deck that I feel that energy. And yeah, so I come at it through another way. Salsal, hello. Here's a really good question. Do I feel it's better to have breadth or depth? Breadth or depth? I think it depends. And decks, I have been to India and to Japan both, for extended periods of time. This is a very, very good question. And there's nothing wrong with collecting decks. I really feel more and more that if you're not using your decks, why do you have them? And I want to work my decks. And I'm going to say, like, just in the past few months, I'm so ready to get rid of the decks that I'm not using, because part of my journey is expanding my journey and understanding my journey and helping other people with their journey. And if I'm not using decks, they're just sitting there collecting dust. So I don't know if breadth or depth is the right answer. It's just, if you use a deck once a year because it feels so deeply connected to Beltane, for example, then that's okay. Then that's your Beltane deck. Or, when the snow starts to melt and the bulbs are coming up, through the earth, and you just feel, your spring deck is the Victorian Fairy Tarot. And the only time you pull out the Victorian Fairy Tarot is when the crocuses are coming up, because you feel it. Or I don't know, like, I think it's okay to have a deck that's only for us a certain time of the year. And so there's not either a lot of depth or breadth with that. You know what I mean? Like, I use the Marielle for certain things, and I would never give it up, but I don't use it a lot. But there are a stack of decks that I never use and I never touch. So I think it's really important to be a little more discriminating in purchasing your decks. And I'm definitely, I'm not going into well, maybe I've started a depth year a few months ago. I will be acquiring a few new decks, but not a lot, because I think it's more important. There's a reason why I purchased some of the ones that I haven't worked with, and I really, really want to take time and work with them. Yes, I have been to India and I've been to Japan. And I hope to get back to both of those places. You're very welcome, Well-Tempered Claire. So are there any other questions? Hello, Coyote. Do you think that slight color scheme changes in different editions of a deck due to printing quality will influence the reading? Well, what deck are you referring to? To me, and I hate to say this, to me that sounds like more like an issue with counterfeit's not the right word. What's the word? I think you need to be really careful, because sometimes that is an issue with decks that are not authentically printed decks. So if you have an example, let me know. Bootleg. Yeah, bootleg might be the word. Oh, okay. For example, Morgan Greer in normal size and tin. Yeah, so the tin is a little more intense, isn't it? Than, if I remember correctly. I don't think so, because the difference is not that great. For example, so these decks, the larger decks are not printed in the same print shop as the decks that come in the smaller boxes with the little white books. And so I believe ever so slightly on the Druid Animal Oracle, it's a little bit lighter than one than the other, and I really prefer the one with a little more color. So I think depending on your, the answer is no. I don't think so, because it's very, very subtle. I guessed you were from Indonesia. Where in Indonesia are you from? That is a large archipelago with many, many islands. Many, many islands. Padangwangi. That's really interesting. Okay. Any other questions? There's 21 of you here. Nobody else has a question? You're in Jakarta. Okay, nice. I haven't been to Jakarta. I've only been to Bali, where all the tourists go. But a long time ago. A long time ago. I was in Bali in the 80s. I was in Bali in the 80s, and there were not paved roads everywhere. So the first time I was in Bali, Sanur, there was no paved roads in Sanur. It was really something. Yeah, I had my first trip to Bali was really quite something. Okay. Well-Tempered Claire says something very interesting here. So let's just look at that, and I think that's a good place to wind up tonight. Yes, sorry, Jonathan. Yes, I did back it, and I will let you know how it is, because I really enjoy. So when I work with past life readings, I'm going to from a teaching I got from one of my yoga teachers, and she calls them karmic life readings. And her intention with a past life reading is to go to the most recent past life where your pattern began. So you're carrying the same pattern. And in this line of thinking, we incarnate multiple lifetimes working through the same issue over and over and over. So in her past life readings, you go back to the most recent past life where your issue began. And the theory is if we can identify that, we can really get a feeling for the pattern that we are working with, and it can help us to kind of bring it more here and understand it. And so I really like that way of working with past lives. And so the reason we're looking for a past life, the intention is so that we can work through the stuff that we're working through now, and perhaps look at it through another lens, and to understand where it came from and how it began. It's a really beautiful way. And I have had spot on readings that match exactly what I received from Ananda Shakti the first time I did a past life reading with the tarot. So yeah. So I'm looking forward to getting that deck, and I will review it and let you know how it is. Ooh, that's a good question. Next future life. Well-Tempered Claire says, I have two modes of reading tarot, intuitive and logical. When I'm in a more intuitive state, I don't pay attention to the color and details as much. Yeah, we're talking right brain, left brain, right brain, left brain. And I think one of the reasons that the left brain people come to the tarot is because they need to find that balance. And in order to really be a balanced tarot reader, we need to be using both sides, right? And so my goal in every reading is to integrate integrate that. I will do a walkthrough as soon as I get it. Okay. All right. So in answer to this question, I don't have a lot of clarity on this. Time as linear, time as we know it, is a construct, a human construct. It is an illusion. It is Maya. Time is a spiral. Time is a web. And we can step in and out of any time if we can understand energy. And so the next future life would be a leveling up and a slightly evolved version working on the same patterns that we're working on this time. But I've never had a reading about it. I've never worked with one of the sages in India, and that's who I would go to. I would go to one of my teachers in India and kind of tap into that. But it's interesting. It's a question I've never asked. Yeah. I did ask the question, is it possible for anyone in this lifetime to clear a karma? And I've asked this question to a couple of enlightened people, and they said, no, it takes lifetimes to clear your karma. You can get darn close, but probably not in one lifetime. And Jonathan does acupuncture with past life regression. That's really cool. Okay. So I have to go too. So thank you. Thank you for walking through this with me tonight. And like I said, I'm going to probably reshoot this with full light so I can go through these decks, and I might add a few other things, but it was lovely chatting with all of you tonight. So I want to wish you well, stay well. Anything else you want to chat about, you can leave a comment below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. All right. Thanks a lot for being here. Namaste.